education systems are antiquated, and businesses have figured out, if Facebook can run thousands, hundreds, think of the businesses that runs hundreds of thousands of employees worldwide. Communication systems en masse that are clearly organized and documented are not new. Why are our education systems not using these? Because, I'm sorry, it's just a rant of mine. So I just don't want to hear I don't know what to do in the fall, because if COVID goes away, we can go back to normal. Normal wasn't good enough for our kids in February.
Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring the topics of music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robbie Burns. John, you've probably had a very different day than I have.
Yeah, my days in COVID land are, every day is like a week, and I know we hear that a lot, but it's pretty real. I get to the end of the days and I'm physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted.
How many Zoom calls did you do just today?
3, 4, something like that. Today was my lightest day.
How long were they each?
An hour. I probably spent an hour on the screen talking. Tomorrow is a lot. I have multiple meetings. I have 2 full presentations I have to give. I'm literally in meetings all day tomorrow from 8:30 a.m. till 5 p.m.
Did you read that thing? I think it was either in the New Yorker or the New York Times about just the science behind Zoom fatigue.
I would not be surprised. It is because it's interesting. There's a different level of being on in a conference room than in a Zoom meeting. I think they're both kind of exhausting, but I don't know. I feel like with Zoom, it takes a little more energy sometimes, because there's also this expectation that you're talking, but there's also a group chat, but also there's emails, and you're just trying to keep everything. It's fatiguing in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's, I'm not doing it right now because obviously I'm on summer break. Not to rub it in or anything.
No worries. There is no summer break in my world right now. This is our slowest time, and we can't even keep up.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. So you've probably got still a ton of people who are emailing you, who are probably starting fresh accounts, who are using the software for the first time.
Oh, yeah. It's a mix of people who are coming to our world the first time. Luckily, Noteflight's a pretty known brand, so there's not a lot of people left out there that haven't heard of Noteflight. But Noteflight Learn, they're still like, oh, wait, there's an education platform. I've kind of heard of it. I wasn't sure. I never checked it out. I've been using free accounts, but now my district wants things to integrate with Canvas or Google, whatever. So we have a lot more people taking the steps necessary to integrate with Noteflight Learn. And then, of course, SoundCheck being brand new, we're having to work overtime to literally build a new brand in the market, when it's been like smart music assessment is what people know. And we're trying to add a new brand in the market.
Since the conversation is just naturally kind of going here, do you want to just start there and maybe introduce yourself? And you've been on the show before. I can't imagine there are that many listeners who have never heard of Noteflight, but I figure it's worth, giving you a second to reintroduce yourself to the listeners of the show and kind of like what your role is there and what are some of the new ongoings.
I like it. Reintroduce. It's like an Eminem album. Allow me to reintroduce myself again. I'm never making another album. Actually, I'm going to make another one. This is really the last one, I swear. That track of that horrible one he made a while ago was like, this is the last album, I swear. I'm never turning back. And he literally dropped another album. Eminem, if you're listening to Robbie's podcast, Marshall, I love your stuff. Just keep making albums, dude. Just don't hide it. So anyway, now that we got that out of the way, I was John Mlynczak. I am managing director of Noteflight, a Howler company. And Noteflight, I guess, was a web-based music notation software, and it was the first web-based music notation software. And over the years, what we are now is we are a web-based online platform where you can create music, you can compose music, you can get performance assessment, you can share music, you can integrate directly with your learning management systems, you can buy and sell your own content. So everything is centralized around music notation, but we've developed an online experience. I wouldn't even call it a website, but more of an online experience where you can we're trying to allow people to do anything they want to do with music notation with Noteflight. whether it's just use it to write music on their own, collaborate with others, buy music as notation, edit for your needs, sell your music as notation to others, teach music, turn it into performance assessment, get feedback on music. So we have a lot going on, and it's really hard, as you can tell, to explain who we are now.
Yeah, so that's actually something I haven't really given much thought to. So how do you explain?
Right. So Noteflight is the official tagline, I guess, is Noteflight is an online platform where you can compose, share, teach, buy, sell your music. We have an integrated SoundCheck, integrated performance assessment where you can turn any Noteflight score into a SoundCheck score where you can get automatic. It's kind of what we're going for. The branding of SoundCheck is important as its own thing because it is its own thing, but it is created from Noteflight and it's directly integrated. So we're
Did you buy them? Were they a company that Noteflight bought, or
it's licensed? It's licensed for Match My Sound. In fact, I think I'm contractually obligated to say that. SoundCheck, powered by Match My Sound. So it's Match My Sound technology, and this has been around for a long time, and it's actually really amazing technology, and through lots of reasons we can't get into on a podcast, it took a long time for us to be able to license it, but now we can, and it's exciting. And we're able to license the technology in unique ways that others cannot. So the core of SoundCheck, when you hit record and you get feedback displayed as red, yellow, green, all of that, that is Match My Sound technology. That is their technology, the core of it. SoundCheck is our brand of that technology, which is integrated directly in Noteflight. So the magic that's happening is anything in Noteflight that you can create, import, whatever, you press a button, and it turns into a SoundCheck score. There's a lot of things that happen in the background, but that to me is the most exciting thing that this market has ever seen, because you and I have spent years, and I'm sure many listeners have teachers spent years of, well, you can compose it in this software and you can export it as XML and you can import it over here. And I know Smart Music has a Smart Music Create, which is kind of a light notation editor where you can import things and clean it up, but then it gets sent over. Noteflight and SoundCheck are more closely directly integrated than anything else. If you can make it in Noteflight, you can see it in SoundCheck, and there's 100% accuracy. Nothing can be lost. It'll look the same. You can go, and SoundCheck will even reference your Noteflight score. So if you're seeing something in SoundCheck you created and said, I really like that up a step and I want to change the ending, you can just go back to the Noteflight score, do whatever you want, hit create SoundCheck again, and bam, there it is.
So SoundCheck is actually a Noteflight branded technology, but Match My Music is the underlying. So they're like the third party brand.
Match My Sound is the third party technology. SoundCheck is technically Hal Leonard's a brand of Match My Sound.
So do they also, because there are other web-based computer platforms that do like record yourself performing on a flute to which you see on the screen, and then we'll analyze it. Do they license their same technology to other?
Yes. So the one that a lot of people have probably heard of is PracticeFirst, which is a MusicFirst product, which you can get inside the MusicFirst classroom. So that's been using Match My Sound for many years. I think since 2016, but it could have been earlier. So that's one of the main uses. Match My Sound is also used by School of Rock now for a School of Rock app that is used with that chain and organization. And that franchise is the word I was looking for. They also have an app they've worked on with ACDA called My Choral Coach that uses the same technology. And they also they have it independently as Achieve Music. So the technology is out there, but specifically for K-12 education, we're excited to be able to offer SoundCheck as a direct integration with Noteflight, because that opens up new ways of accessing. One of the issues with the technology is always, how do I get content, right? And importing music XML is fine, but you and I both know that XML is not perfect, and you can lose bits and pieces. But with Noteflight, because the conversion is 100% accurate to SoundCheck, you just have to you can use Noteflight's full editor to make whatever you want, and it automatically just shows up as.
And Noteflight as a standalone product has really grown in popularity as a notation editor. It's funny, I hear a lot of my colleagues, we always have these debates in my district about, which one of the professional score editors are we going to be able to license on our computers? And, a couple of years back, we had just got these new MacBook Airs, and there were all these emails floating around between teachers and our music supervisor about like, how are you're going to get a Sibelius, right? You've got to get a Sibelius. We want Sibelius. And, as the emails are passing around, some people, there's like the Finale crew. And so it's what it comes down to is in the end, the three offerings that we were able to license were Finale, Sibelius, and Noteflight, because Noteflight is not something that I think it's like, it's in many ways a capable tool, but I don't think it's always uttered in the same breath as like the really professional ones that you think of a composer using, but it really is so flexible and popular and capable that for for most of the average teacher's needs, it does the job.
That's actually a really good way to put it, Rob. You should be our marketing person. And I can tell you this detail, notation products, they're all great. Finale, Sibelius, they're all wonderful products. Noteflight is web-based. So that's the first thing to remember. Our number one thing is that you can access it with a login and it runs in your browser anywhere you go. So that leads to, amazing opportunities, but that also leads to limitations. And I'll be very honest, there are things that Finale and Sibelius can do that a web-based product won't ever be able to do. One of the things for us, like custom fonts, right? We have to license web fonts. People don't realize the fonts on your machine, you have Windows fonts or Mac fonts, and a downloaded program could just call those. We have to license web fonts. So we have a limited amount of fonts we can use. And especially when it comes to special characters and things like that, that's one of the challenges. Of course, we can add more and more, but there's a substantial cost for us. Audio, of course, playback, we're kind of limited to what the browser can handle. When Sibelius, what do you have, 60 gigabytes of sounds or 50 gigabyte download on a computer?
Yeah. I don't have it installed on my computer anymore, but yeah, I think
it's 50, and that's great, and they sound amazing. We cannot run 50 gigabytes of sounds through your web browser. Your Chrome would crash every time you hit play. So, we license sounds. We've downsampled them. They're live audio samples that have been downsampled for the web, as large as we can get them, but as small as it can be handled. There's different things that we have to do to make that work. So that's one thing. And then, the large scores, different sizes. So there are some limitations, but overall, we try to know where we make sense and where Finale and Sibelius make sense. And of course, you can import and export between them.
Of course. Yeah, it's funny you're mentioning all the heavy lifting features, whereas for me, a lover of native apps, I just like the feeling of an app having an icon on my computer, and the files live on the hard drive, and I access them in the same way that I access, a Microsoft Word document. But the market has spoken. I mean, web software, especially in education, is so prevalent that everyone is comfortable. In fact, a lot of people in my school, I don't know that the people in my school building really open documents on their computer. I think that they mostly just collaborate in Google
Google Docs and stuff.
Google Docs are not documents in the traditional sense, but there's so many of them floating around that what's opening another tab and getting most of the features you need for everyday note input. It's
a good point, right? Your hard drive will never crash because of Noteflight scores. It's our storage that we're paying for, right? And so it's all stored with us, and that's I'll tell you one of the other challenges I was going to get to about Noteflight is we came in later. We don't think of ourselves as an engraving tool. We think of ourselves as a composition tool and creating tool. And I'll say that, and I'm not, no disrespect to any other notation product, but an engraving tool is used for high level engraving. So you want to be in control of every musical element. I want this slur to go this way. I want this accent to be placed here, and I want to move it because it's got to look perfect for print. And let's basically, that's where these Finale and Sibelius were designed to make things look beautiful in print. And they do that really well. And so does Noteflight. But one of the things we're trying to do at Noteflight is we're trying to serve, the fourth grade student that's composing for the first time all the way to the professional composer who's selling their music on Noteflight Marketplace and everything in between. So we try to make sure that when you open Noteflight and say create score, you are entering notes and making music in 3 clicks. Create score, template, click the measure, and you can enter notes. There's no multiple dialogues of how many measures do you want and what key do you want it in and blah, blah, blah. We just want you to start creating music because a fourth grader doesn't know what key they want to be in yet. So that's one of the things. And then we want to make sure we have all the notation features people want, but we don't bombard you with everything. no disrespect to other products, but sometimes when you try to enter an articulation in some other notation editors, you have to go in a menu and open a palette, and you have this huge box of all these options. You got to scroll, you know. We can't put all that on your 13-inch Chromebook screen, right? So we do like a limited palette on the left, and we do things strategically where when you pin the palette, we have a condensed mode by default, and we have an expanded mode. So we have the more advanced notation features that can expand out, but we don't bombard you with, you know, like septuplets when you try to go into a duplet. You know, you can just create a triplet as your default. So just things like that we try very hard at. It works really well. The only issue is some people look at Noteflight and they're like, well, Noteflight can't do all this stuff. And it kind of bites us sometimes. We're like, no, it's actually in the expanded menu. Or no, you just have to go here. They're like, oh, I didn't see it. It's like, yes, because we're not actually making you look at everything in order to make decisions. So sometimes people assume Noteflight can't do stuff because we intentionally try to not hit you with all the, like, every possible option before you create the music. Our philosophy is create the music, then you can format and edit, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. I feel like you can't really make a score editor that completely solves this problem. Like, there's software that I can think of that's simple enough where, like, you could take something like Microsoft Word versus like Apple's iWork suite, like Pages being made by Apple. Like, I feel way more at home in Pages because there are not tons of buttons all over the place distracting me, and it's really easy to find what I want without having to think about it or Google it.
Yes.
But those two programs do most of the same things. So yeah, I mean, score editing is just such a complex thing, and you know, some of the companies do better than others. I use Dorico as like my power score editing tool, and I really like what they've done. They've borrowed a lot of the design language of the Adobe creative apps, but a lot of stuff can be disclosed to you progressively, so you are not always looking at, you know what I mean? Like, you can have it look just like all you see is the staff,
right?
Or you can have like windows all over the place, but it's sort of progresses. So yeah, but I think Noteflight, for, you know, something that's running in a web tab, is certainly solving a lot of these problems. And you know, where I use it the most is actually as a teacher of band, but also someone who has a general music class. That is our main composing tool,
right? And
the kids can figure it out pretty easily, and at the reasonable rate that it's at per student seat. I mean, I just can't speak highly enough to the, like, I seriously was just like using staff paper and pencil with them to do these really small composing projects before Noteflight was in our classroom. And it just helps them so much to have, number one, limitations that are enforced by the computer, but also, like, handwriting is not an issue. They really like technology, so they really like to kind of dig into the features and see what it can do, even if it's not something I necessarily taught formally. So
one of the you like kids you know, like technology. One of the things I've found is I've learned over the years and using Noteflight a lot in my own teaching and just talking to teachers all the time is that, I mean, as we know, students are going through the many developmental stages of life. You know, they want autonomy. They want their own choice. They don't want another adult telling them where to sit, what to do, what time they can do this. And, you know, they start to, I mean, we know this sort of like going through development. And, you know, one of the things about integrating Noteflight is it's a different approach than here's your music. You're going to play second clarinet. You're going to sit down. You're going to learn this. You're going to be tested on measures 8 through 16 on this day. And you're going to play this perfectly. You're going to, and I mean, no disrespect to traditional music education at all, but you know, sometimes people approach Noteflight and the teacher is like, well, I need to compose something and give it to my students and tell them. And I said, well, you can do that. But here's the thing, like, set up an easy template and let your students compose something. Give them a voice. That's why when we integrated SoundCheck, we deliberately made it so students can create SoundCheck scores and share them with each other. Like, a student can compose anything they want, create a SoundCheck score, and send it to their friends and say, I challenge you to get an 80% and you have 2 tries to do it. And that's really important to us, to never take away that student.
So I want to kind of pivot to that, but I do want to mention Noteflight Learn for anyone who is unfamiliar. I mean, you did explain it a second ago, but like, is Noteflight Learn a prerequisite for SoundCheck, or are they 2 separate add-ons to the Noteflight experience?
That's a really good question. So Noteflight Learn is a product for schools. It is a product purchased for bulk users and mostly teachers and students in that case.
Could you call it a learning management system? Is that fair to?
It's not really, because it doesn't really have a grade book or anything like that. But yes, we have lots of LMS features. But yes, Noteflight Learn is its own separate site. When you purchase Noteflight Learn, you're purchasing your own, and you being the teacher or the admin of a school district, you're purchasing a Noteflight experience that is in a self-contained community, not on Noteflight.com, where you can control how many teachers and students interact in your own community. And everyone in Noteflight Learn gets all premium benefits. You can add SoundCheck, you can add content, you can make groups and share. But all the sharing and collaboration is in its own community, and that falls into like COPPA for privacy laws. And you can use Noteflight standalone. So it is an LMS in that if you want to use Noteflight Learn by itself, you can create your own, you can do your own member management. You can give students usernames and passwords, and you can have forums where they can do discussions, and you can give assignments and whatever. But Noteflight Learn, the same experience, also integrates with other learning management systems, because we're finding that if a school says we're invested in Google Classroom and you're using Google, we're a Google school, we need to integrate with Google. So we fully integrate with Google Classroom. So you can integrate Noteflight Learn with Google, and the students just sign in with Google. They get their assignments through Google. It all works. Same with Canvas, Moodle, Schoology, Blackboard, and others.
Yeah. So Noteflight Learn is kind of like, like my understanding of it, you're expanding it a little bit, but my understanding is that it is a library of musical repertoire that a group of students and a teacher can subscribe to, and then a teacher can assign a student something from that library, and then it appears to the student as a Noteflight score, right? Like if I want to learn a particular method book, I go to view that. Like let's say there are method books in the Noteflight Learn library, right?
There are some, more to come.
I'm trying to think, like I don't have like all the method books on the tip of my tongue right now, because I guess I'm in summer mode. But say like band method, whatever. You go and you find like exercise 6 from that. So does that appear to the student as a Noteflight?
Everything's
version?
a Noteflight. Everything's a Noteflight score. So Noteflight Learn is a community where everyone has a Noteflight account. They have full access to create composed music.
Okay.
They can share music. It's just, think of a community of people, but instead of Noteflight.com, it is howardcounty.sites.noteflight.com. It is your own area. So it's a Noteflight account. It's sharing. It's collaboration. It's extra content. Everything is a Noteflight score. There's no PDFs.
So you could assign someone to compose something or to perform something, all based on a Noteflight score.
Yes. You can record into Noteflight. So a Noteflight score, you can audio record your own audio. You could turn a Noteflight score into a SoundCheck score, and it's still in Noteflight Learn, and you can share it and you can collaborate. And that sharing, collaboration, and all the account management is only contained to the students and teachers in that particular school or district.
So it's worth mentioning that not only does the stuff in the Noteflight library exist and is accessible to assign to a student, but because Noteflight is a score editor, it's really easy for a teacher to write a short etude or like an 8-measure example or a short melody, and then assign that in Noteflight Learn to the student. So with SoundCheck added on top of that, now it is analyzing accuracy of pitch, rhythm, and intonation, right?
Yes. And SoundCheck scores are separate from Noteflight scores, right? You generate SoundCheck from Noteflight, but you can generate as many as you want.
Got it. And SoundCheck doesn't also just offer that instructive sort of teaching tool, like the analysis. It also allows the student to do things like, I was playing around. I wrote a list here. I don't want to miss anything. So like you could do something like slow down the tempo, or you could turn on or off the metronome track. You could look at the full score. You could isolate it where you're only seeing your own individual part. So there's all these kind of tools that assist the student with learning. One of the things I liked was that you can actually like isolate a couple of measures and just have it play back and record only that spot and analyze it.
You have played with it. And actually, it's been updated like earlier today of another feature, which we can now offer. And I'll just say, like, the SoundCheck we're launching now is only the beginning. This is just first launch. Like, it is going to grow and grow. But one of the features we're able to get in at first launch is the ability to, the student can now, when they record their assessment, they can choose in the headphones to hear just a metronome, or they can record along with the full audio track of the full score. So if you go to like that beginning band example in there, you'll notice now that there's, maybe later today, I forget when the update's going to push, but you'll notice now that you can see demo audio, metronome, or backing track. Because in choral, right, it's sometimes hard to expect a student to sing an isolated part with a metronome and hold pitch over time. And of course, no one really wants the student to be able to sing along with their part and like have to just be rote. That kind of defeats the purpose. But you can actually sing along with the full choral part. So you have the SATB with piano in your ears, but you're having to sing just your part along with that. And students can choose that option now, which we're pretty excited about. In the future, we want to be able to do like combinations of parts and let you select on and off. That's all coming, but early stages, right?
So the tracks are audio tracks, not like the MIDI lines of the Noteflight project?
Right. They're all, Noteflight doesn't use MIDI for playback. It actually uses rendered live audio samples. So as far as what's created in SoundCheck, yes, the backing tracks that you're hearing are the Noteflight generated audio. Now, of course, you can go in Noteflight and you could use the mixer and adjust that audio to your liking. So whatever you mix and create in Noteflight is what's generated in SoundCheck. So you do have control over that. Jazzers always like to ask about, what about swing eighths? Yes, you can set the eighth note swing at Noteflight. You can even swing sixteenths at Noteflight. Whatever you set that Noteflight playback to is what you'll be assessed against in SoundCheck. Now, this is where it gets really cool. Noteflight has an audio recording feature. If you audio record in Noteflight a performance, that is what's used to generate that SoundCheck reference. So let's say I'm a trumpet player, which is true, or was at one point, and I want to write a sight reading or play my part from there, and I play my part perfectly, quote unquote, perfectly, right? I can actually send that to my section and say, all right, now y'all can get assessed against how well you can play against me playing the part, which is kind of cool. I know.
Okay. So I could record, could I import an existing MP3?
Not yet, but that's a future feature. That's really tricky because that MP3 has to be perfectly aligned and synced to Noteflight's playback.
Yeah, to the tempo grid, right?
Right, and there's a bunch of considerations in giving users a tool so they can go in and map that, which we don't have now. We just can't import it and guess, So that's on the roadmap though.
Okay, so you can play along. There are options for playing along to real live audio of people.
Yeah, so in Noteflight, you would hit record in Noteflight and you would record your performance, and then you would create SoundCheck, and then the SoundCheck would be the notation and your recorded performance. And other people would be assessed against your recorded performance.
Yeah, something I've never given thought to is, with everyone making these virtual this and that videos this past semester, this would have been a useful tool for that.
Oh, well, I can tell you right now that with SoundCheck, you can download the audio. So let's say you assign a SoundCheck score to your whole class. And you mentioned earlier, Robbie, that like the way SoundCheck works is it works the same as Noteflight. You get a full score, but then you can select individual parts. So as teacher, you don't have to sit there and say, let me assign the trumpet to the trumpet and the flute to the flute. You just give them the whole thing, and then they select their part. Every student can, after they record their part, they can download their recording. And of course, all those recordings will be synced up because they were done to the same reference and the same metronome. Yeah. So you could have students do their assessment of something and also download their recording, throw it in the Google Drive, and you could, slap them all in Logic, and ta-da, you have yourself a virtual ensemble audio.
Yeah, I love the idea also that the student has context of the score. I think that's a really useful teaching tool, and just the easy ability to turn on and off the different tracks of the score, so to speak.
Absolutely. That's actually really important to us, that they see the full score first, because any musician knows it's your part, in reference to everyone else, and you need to have a full understanding of that. So we wanted to keep that with SoundCheck and Noteflight. We wanted to keep that parallel. So, and it's also super easy for the teacher, right? Like if you want to make a scale exercise, write out the scale, copy and paste it for the different instruments, and just send that out, and people can pick their part, right? You don't have to, again, make a version for every single instrument, because that takes forever.
Sure. Well, I'm thinking too, like if we're doing a piece where I really want the students to be aware of the tuba part, or if a particular trombone line doubles a bassoon line, like the idea of telling a student, hey, like you can turn it up in your mix when you're practicing. I love that too.
Right. So that's a really good point. So here's another thing where I really like, people that really get into Noteflight and realize I can adapt this, people still don't realize you can adapt it. Let's say you pull a band score out of the Noteflight library and you're really trying to get students to understand other people's roles. How about copy that over, take the trombone part, switch it to a trumpet part, and you can change the octave, but say, hey, trumpet players, I want you to now to be assessed on what the trombone players play. And then even crazier, wait for this, y'all, it's going to get really crazy in here. You could actually copy the melody and give it to the trombone so they could play melody for once. What? Right? So like, that's the thing that just excites me. Like, take these Noteflight content, grab the melody, transpose that for the instruments, and say every student gets to be assessed on the melody. Whether the trombone player ever gets to play it or not, they have a thorough understanding of what the is and how their part supports it, and also teach your traditional melody instruments how to support other lines. Just change it in Noteflight, and better yet, make the kids do it. Like, assign the kids the score and say your job is to highlight the melody in blue and any counter melody lines in green and accompaniment in orange or whatever. Again, engage students in understanding these roles, and then say, okay, now transpose the accompaniment for your instrument, create a sound check, and send your assessment in. Right? I always say, have you seen fifth grade math these days? Do you know how hard fifth grade math is? If fifth graders can do their math assignments, they can learn what transposing instruments are, and they can learn how to transpose key signatures. I'm just, I hear that a lot. The people are like, well, my kids don't know how to transpose. What better time? If I was teaching K-12 right now, one of my first online modules that I'd have for my kids in the August would be what transposition is and how it works. And I'd give some Noteflight assignments practicing that. Because as soon as they can do that, it unlocks a whole world for them, right? Imagine your saxophone player sitting at home and like, I can't play music unless my teacher gives it to me. They should be able to find a song they love in Noteflight or online and understand how to take it up a sixth and play it and play along with others. Right? Like that's a huge blocker sometimes, and we have to unblock that for kids.
Yeah, right on. No, teaching with that kind of context is a big part of the way that I teach band. And, just listening for everything that's going on and understanding that everything that you do expressively and dynamically and tonally is relative to what's happening in your near and far environment. I think like the visual tool, having such a visual tool, also providing that context that a teacher can easily, or a student can easily manipulate with that amount of flexibility is really good.
No, of course. And I taught a small band when I taught private school band, and I would have the luxury of just getting whatever instrumentation at any time, right? And so I had to figure out very quickly how to make music work. So I was writing stuff. If it was traditional music, I'd have to rewrite parts, or like, oh my gosh, the French horns have something. Now I got to find it for my saxophones. And I just got tired of writing things out. So finally I'm like, hey saxophone, I'm gonna give you this French horn part. At these measures, I want you to look over to this part and play it up a step in this key. And they'd be like, what? I don't understand. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. You can do it. And the kids just figured it out. It's just, you just have to like tell them. And so as I taught more and more, my students could transpose things like crazy, especially like saxophone to bass clef, because it kind of works out anyway, E-flat instruments. Just change the key. They were so good. Like my kids would have like 3 pieces of music on their stand, and they'd start at the beginning, they'd switch to this measure, and they'd have pencil all over. They can do it. You just have to make it like the norm,
Do you know what else kids can do that a lot of people don't think they can do if you make it the norm?
What?
This is a pivot. I'm topic changing.
Do it.
I'm not really topic changing. I'm slightly turning a corner. Kids can play in tune. Did you know that kids can play in tune? I
would 100% agree with that.
I think you know where I'm going with this because we talked about it the other day. So SoundCheck is interesting to me, and allow me to just unpack this a little bit for the people who are listening, because I want to reference 3 episodes ago, episode 10. I'm trying to remember exactly what I titled it, but it was something to the effect of creating and developing curriculum using FileMaker. I had my colleague on. He's the orchestra teacher at Ellicott Mills, and we talked about how we sequence our skill development of musical instruments through creating this sequence of songs. And some of the songs are short folk songs, some are short etudes, some are scale patterns, and we've combined them all in a different order for all of the different instruments that we teach. And then in FileMaker, which is an app that makes apps, we've created basically a database that connects the students' names to the pieces smashing them together into records of performance. So like John maybe performed Lightly Row on December 13th. So there's like a spreadsheet of students, a spreadsheet of songs, and then there's a spreadsheet that tracks not only when did you play one of those songs, but what points on our rubric did you get, which are all columns and fields in the sheet that marks the sequence of songs that the students play. So we're talking about how we sequence the instruction and how FileMaker, which is not a tool. If you go listen to that episode, if you're interested in any of this, or if you think FileMaker sounds neat, but FileMaker is just a lot of work on our part. And when I say our a lot when I talk about this, but really like he did all the work. We make that very clear in episode 10. You have to do so much scripting. You have to do so much tweaking and designing to make this, but it ultimately provides us a ton of flexibility to teach exactly the way that we want to teach. Now, one of the things that is a real central focus in our instruction is teaching students to have a sense of tonality, and the whole philosophy behind that is also addressed in episode 10. But basically, like that, the oral skills are the center of the instruction at a very, very early time. And it's funny you mentioned kids like taking trombone melodies and transposing them into the trumpet. I actually, with my youngest band this past year, we played unison melodies for like the first
I did it all the time
quarter of the year. And if I was like in Dorico taking like whatever three things were going on in measures 1 through 8, and then writing it for, here's the bass part, measures 1 through 8 for every instrument. Here's the alto line for every instrument. But with Noteflight, with the feature you were describing a minute ago, I could have really, really easily just said to everyone, okay, everybody measure 1 through 8. We're playing the tuba part, and then just snap the tuba part into the right register for every instrument. So
100%. I got a my quick anecdote about my teaching. I bought a classroom set of these, I guess they're Hal Leonard books that have to be their pop music, but they had like top 25 pop songs for instrument, like easy, middle. So I had a class set of them, and I would give like they're all unison melodies, but transposed to different instruments, and they came with a backing track. So I'd have my kids learn pop songs unison and I would like crank the speakers up with the CD behind, and they would play along. We do that at our concert a little bit. It's amazing. You work on this like rep and all the things I was talking about with the kids, and perfectly balancing the concert band rep. And like how hard it was, and like the parents were like, "Oh, that's cute. Tiger sunk the punt on the 18th green. That was nice." The kids play a unison pop melody with a Samson 15-inch speaker on the floor behind them, cranking out in the gym, and they just lose their minds. Like it's the coolest thing in the world because they just it's all perception, but it's great. Like let's mix and balance that stuff.
No, I totally dig it. And even a simple folk song that's like super ancient with beautiful tone quality, like the parents can't put exactly the right words to it, but like the parents will tell me that they can tell there's something different when we've like really developed the tone quality in a performance. And and that's something that's really special. Like you don't need to be fancy or play the hardest music if that concept is there. And that's why the unison is there, is like you develop a center of pitch by playing everyone's part and playing the same note at the same time. The added benefit, of course, is now you know what to listen for when everyone goes to their actual part.
I have a question for you. Let's just go crazy here. Do you think students, because I definitely have an opinion here, as far as you said, students like can play in tune. Do they learn better and play more in tune when they're playing something that they already know the melody of? They already know the song?
Yeah, that's exactly... I hate to keep referencing episode 10, but we totally like anything that comes back to you having a stronger mental concept of it. The matching of that concept in your performance is clear. It's easier. The pathway to that result is clearer.
100%. And this is my dream. If I had time, this is where Noteflight kind of comes in. Think about beginning band, right? And you can learn your first 3 notes, and you could play 3 blind mice, blah, blah, ha, 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 right? I mean, but kids don't listen to that song. Or you can play bop, 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 ba, da, 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 da. It's the same 3 notes, right? But they've heard Eye of the Tiger somewhere, and they could jam along with that, and there's a reference. So my whole dream is like to change the way we approach creating music, and we use these traditional methods, sure, but we can immediately say, now, what song uses, how many songs use these 3 notes? Let's compose them in Noteflight and figure out how the rhythm goes together, and then let's play them and share them with each other. Like, I want those tools to transform the way we learn music.
I want to come back to that in the sense that you are definitely like there's a whole lot I want to talk to you about like kind of like the future of teaching, and especially even the near future, like this fall. But I just want to finish, like, because I've got I guess the setup for my intonation question for you is longer than the actual discussion is going to end up being.
No,
but
go. Sorry.
No, it's fine, because what you just said is totally relevant. But I guess the bottom line is this: like, the oral concept always improves the performance, because who do we learn to how do we develop speech? We listen to our parents. This is why so many children have noticeable mannerisms that are in common with either their parents or with like people who influence them, like even if it's just a celebrity or a friend or someone who has a strong hold and influence. But there is also in music education, there's like there's a grind to a performing art. This is, at the end of the day, this is a craft and also an art, and you have to do certain things in order to develop your tone and your intonation. And I see tools that are digital as really making the process of making good tone and intonation something that's like way more accessible than it was even when I was student teaching. And I remember my mentor teacher gave me a CD where he had taken each tuning drone on a Dr. Beat and recorded each note for 3 minutes. Yeah, and then so he could give it to all the students and have them play, like if you're playing in the key of D, you got a D drone on, so you're hearing the intervals and you're, trying to get, like, if you're out of tune, there's beats, and you're really hearing the beats and adjusting your pitch so that there's perfect harmony. So I see something like SoundCheck can do a little bit of intonation, and I see an opportunity here because our FileMaker system is very flexible for us, but it is so much work on our end. And if we could automate some of the just the assigning process of, like, here's what you have to do and recording it, because, like, we're listening to all of these performances in person, and I think, like, I already know that like what we do with intonation, the way we score it on our rubric is like more detailed than what SoundCheck can do. But I kind of want to talk about this a little bit, because I think, like, the fact that there's like a red and a yellow and a green for like how in tune you are is really interesting.
Well, it's accountability, right? It's accountability, and I will never position SoundCheck as a replacement for teachers, and I will never position any music technology as a replacement for the master-apprentice relationship that is learning music, because music is a very high-level art, and it is an art that will never be perfected, but is an endless pursuit of perfection, and it is a lifelong learning experience. And you could awaken it to, like, just being like a master craftsman of anything, whether it's a blacksmith or something like that. Like, you just don't read a book about that. You do, and you do again, and you find masters of the craft, and you study, and you learn more, and that's what music is. So I'm never a technologist that's going to say, oh yeah, SoundCheck's a replacement, but there's an amount of accountability. When students record assessments, it's sometimes like, is it good enough for my teacher? Okay, I'll just turn it in and see what happens. And SoundCheck will hold you accountable, right? Students see, actually, that was red and that dipped down. And they're like, okay, we'll have to do it again. You set this minimum score, so you know just by looking at it that the kid's been held accountable already. And I think as a teacher, especially when it's like a full band piece, you can just eyeball and say, you know what, this is where the red is, this is where the yellow is, this is where the rhythm's a little off. Let me listen there and let me give my feedback on how to improve the sections that obviously the student struggled with. If it's green and straight and good, you're probably not going to need to listen to that necessarily. So it allows the teacher to really, like, benefit from just having an efficient amount of time and zeroing in on where the student needs help. Right? Because feedback is about how to get better next time, not why you got a grade this time. So figure out where the kid's struggling, tell them how to make that thing better next time, and keep on moving.
Well, here's something that I already knew, but COVID online learning is just reinforcing it. Like, there are students of mine in our uppermost performing ensemble that play their instrument more during the fourth quarter because of the nature of me asking them to record videos and upload them to Canvas, our learning management system. So, like, the act of recording at once was more than, honestly, some of our students had taken their instrument out of the case, if we're being real, in a long time. So the fact that you're then on top of that, well, it's like, okay, well, I'm not really happy with that, so I'm going to record that again and again and again. And you have students who are practicing in a different way, even if, let's just say that, because my students weren't using an analysis tool like SoundCheck, but let's say even if they were, and the analysis is providing them the feedback that they're totally off. Like, the repeat nature of that process is good even without the feedback.
Oh, absolutely.
But the feedback is a helpful tool. And, you said that it won't replace a teacher. And no one is going to replace me teaching a kid how to hear the beats that are produced when two notes are slightly out of tune with each other. But once a student has some of those general concepts, I can teach them how to understand the Tonal Energy app and the smiley face guy. Mm-hmm. And I can teach them, because, that app has a line that represents your pitch. And if you go even like 1 cent sharp, the line, it very clearly shows that rise in pitch. So if that can happen, this is kind of like my dream. I'm telling you, I'm dreamcasting with you.
Let's do it.
Dreamcasting, John. I want it to, well, and dreamcasting is, in this case, is just me feature requesting to you. But it sounds like you have some control over the future of SoundCheck's feature set. So I'm dreaming with you here. If someone could just smash together the tuning features to the Tonal Energy tuner with one of these record yourself into the computer and then we analyze you apps, where I could like put it in just intonation if I wanted, or if it could like just a little bit more like deeply analyze the notes, or if the grade could be more heavily, like I would love it to be so detailed that I could give a Noteflight assignment that's just a D on a whole note, and a flute player would play that whole note, and this whole grade would be what percentage of that note was in tune.
Yeah, within a certain deviation of sense. No, it's funny to talk about feature development. One of the most exciting and challenging parts of my job, like people are always like, what do you do all day? It's like, oh, I don't, like, my mom asks me all the time. She's like, and she's probably listening. She's like, what do you do? I'm like, I just do all stuff all day. Like, but one of the most challenging parts that I take very seriously, it's like the great power, great responsibility, is that my ultimate role is to make sure that what Noteflight produces is what people want, and it's of the highest quality. And I have a development team, I have a sales and marketing team. Of course, I work very closely with Hal Leonard daily, so it's also other Hal Leonard tools. And so I kind of have this pressure of, you have feature requests, your dream car. We have a feature backlog of years of stuff. I have to go through and decide, okay, what's the next thing our developers build, and why is it the next thing over everything else, right? Who's going to use it? How many people does it benefit? What problem does it solve? I mean, just to be honest, it has to be attributed to revenue, because I have to pay these people, right? And so just software has a cost, and 3 developers for a month, you could add up, I mean, that's a cost. And I have to make sure that we're using these folks, and we have more than 3. I always, do the math there, but I'm just saying, and it's a challenge, because I want everything right now, and we all do. And it's learning about when to say no, but it's also one of the things that I've been working on a lot, and you should see it in Noteflight. And if you don't, hold me accountable to it, is that we don't release things that are not thoroughly tested and really great. In fact, we're trying to rush SoundCheck out as quick as possible. Now, luckily, SoundCheck's an existing product based on Match My Sound, so we know it works. But we test the bejesus out of stuff. We just passed 5 million lifetime users. We'll have 1 million people using our site every month come August, September. We can't afford to add a new feature that could be a bad experience for someone. And so putting one little teeny thing in Noteflight is a lot of time, and we're very design first. So before we even start coding, there are mock-ups that are not just mock-ups. Like, you can look at them and you would think it's Noteflight software. Every button, exactly what happens when a user presses it, what happens if they get themselves in an error state, what's the error message, all the back-end code, all the different pieces, everything it could affect. I mean, there is so much time that goes into these features. And so it's a fun challenge, but like, I'm always like, when we release something new, we made a huge announcement today about the keyboard shortcut feature. That took months to build. In fact, it's been live for 3 weeks, but we do this a lot of times too. We will not only test things, we'll put it live on the site, and we will monitor its usage and make sure that enough people have used it effectively before we tell 600,000 people about it. And so that's another thing that we do pretty consistently. So it's hard, right? It's like, what do we build? What do we build next? And why do we build it?
It's got to be one of the I don't know. I think it's a really interesting part of your job. I am engaged by that. Like I would, when I think about the things that you do, like the Zoom calls don't sound fun, but working with the software development team sounds like a whole lot of fun.
Oh yeah, we have a phenomenal team design and development, and we have a great product manager that helps do all that. But again, it's kind of like the buck stops here, and I have to make those decisions carefully. And I've also learned that, it's like everything else in teaching, your own biases, your own lens, your own experience, but you have to listen outside of that, because I am very much a music educator first. And so I've always actually at Noteflight really wanted to prioritize anything for Noteflight Learn or anything for music education goes to the top of the list in my mind. But we use multiple data points, right? So we look at Google Analytics. In fact, everything you press and touch in Noteflight, we can look and analyze. You want to say how many people hit record on Tuesday of last month that was using Safari version 11 on an iOS device? I could tell you. I could tell you anything. And a lot of times we prioritize, well, should we make this better? Well, how many people are using it? Let's go look at the data. So we bring in all the usage data. We bring in like a user feature request. We look at people that are searching our support center, what people are writing. Like our support team, when you write support, if it's a question about a feature, that gets cataloged into the product roadmap. Or if it's a feature we don't have, that gets added to the product roadmap. So all of these data points come in, and a lot of times I have to sit back and say, okay, John, just because you want it, like the thing you want is 5% of what our people want, but 30% of our people really want this thing. And so it's listening to data and we're very much a user data driven experience.
Is this your way of telling me that I'm in the 5% with wanting intonation features?
This is my way of saying I love you dearly, but if you think we're going to build a single note analysis of cent deviation this year, I just want to manage expectations that in 2052, you will have that, right?
Someone's going to eventually realize that the technology is out there already. They just have to smash it together.
And it's fine. Yeah, and we want to do it. I mean, I'm not making light of it, but it's really challenging, right? And we have to consolidate our direction. One of the things I'm working on now is we need to consolidate our direction because we have a lot of things going on, like I'm struggling now with the social aspect of Noteflight.com. And we have these groups and we have these forums, and they're not being heavily used. And it's either something that I think we need to monitor or just kind of get rid of and make it more about sharing music and less forum specific. It's a challenge, right? You never want to take away, but you want to be focused. Also, we have to understand that we're 11 years old. We build groups and forums, and Noteflight was originally conceived as a social network around creating music. But think about where Facebook was in 2008. I mean, was Twitter even a thing? I mean, so the iPhone had just come out. So we have to understand that people experience social networks much differently. And I don't think people need another place. So we have to look at the changes in the world around us and realize what's our niche and how do we fill it? Because you really just need to be really, really good at what you do best and be better than everyone else at that, and not try to do everything for everyone kind of okay, because that's where you get in trouble.
The answer is, by the way, that no, we do not need another social
network. Yeah, and we're probably going to kill that part of our site, but don't tell anyone. If you're listening, you didn't hear that.
I should correct myself. We don't need another social network like Twitter or Facebook in the current day.
Oh, right. But what's cool about my job now, this is why I literally work 12-hour days and all weekend long and haven't stopped till I'm absolutely like blue in the face. Because suddenly when COVID happened, everyone wanted an online music learning solution. And Noteflight Learn and the education side of what we do became the most important thing. And suddenly now all these things that I've always wanted to just invest in Noteflight Learn, but we also have to support our marketplace and all these other technologies. Now that's the most important thing. So we were told, we made the decision to, but we're also pivot and make online education your most important thing. So now it's like a dream, because John's wish list of all the things he's always wanted to do in Noteflight Learn, we get to do them, and they're the most important thing. And we've done more in the past 2 months. I was testing a new build today, and I was like, there's so much amazing stuff in here, from making sites to sharing to collaborating. We're just fixing all this stuff, and it's adding features. It's at SoundCheck's a big piece of that, but also little things. We fixed so many things in Noteflight Learn in the past 2 months. We haven't even announced it because there are things about the introduction experience, like when you first create an account, the user feeling of creating an account to getting your students going. It took too many steps. We've made it so easy and seamless that you can just go in and create your sites and like automatically. But the question is, well, how do you market that, right? Because if a new user comes to your world and they have a seamless positive experience, how do you tell people that didn't get that experience before that it's better? Like, they don't need to know. So we've actually done a lot of stuff that we haven't marketed. And there's a joke about like, what do I send a press release? Guess what? This thing in Noteflight's not difficult anymore. Ta-da! Like, I don't need to broadcast that it was too difficult. So we're now like new customers that come to our world have such a much more streamlined, better experience. And it's sad that I can't tell anyone because I want to tell the world we did this cool thing, but new people don't need to know. They just need to come in and have a great experience. And people that did it before, we don't need to say, hey, that used to suck, but now it's better. Like, so what do, right? You just make it super easy and awesome. And it is, and it's super exciting. I can finally tell someone that we did it. So yeah, that's also fun. And we're doing more of that too. So that's kind of the goal as well, especially with like Google integration. But
well, you know me, I like those kinds of details, but
I know one day you're going to work for Noteflight. You don't know it yet.
I don't know it yet. Gosh, I'm going to add that intonation feature.
Yeah, exactly. Your job is going to be making an intonation feature, but we want to do all of it, and like it is a joy to see how many people are experiencing. It's also a joy to get like customers who are writing us, but like, you saved us. Like, this is what we need. But let's talk about this, Robbie. Like, all right. So like, let's do the disclaimer. COVID is very bad. People dying is very bad. The economy, all that. Like, there's a lot of bad right now. For education specifically, being forced to not just go online, because I understand there's a lot of issues online for students who don't have access and equitable, and I get that. But I'm just talking about education in general, teachers and the education system being forced to educate the future of our society with modern tools. Like, think about for every time there was a struggle about figuring out how to get kids on a Meet or a Zoom call, or how to structure an assignment in an online world using a Google Doc I use those tools in business all the time. Businesses use collaborative online tools all the time, right? If education truly is about making the future generation better than ourselves, then it shouldn't have been such a struggle to do this, because we should have been using these already. And this is the kick in the butt that education needs. IMHO. Prove me wrong.
Well, no, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. The problem that I'm seeing is I've talked to a handful of educators who are like, this could be a real opportunity to have some reform, especially when it comes to how we teach and with technology tools also on their mind. And the thing is like, so much is uncertain, right? Like, how long is it going to be till school is normal? Like, I think if we knew that, decisions would be maybe a little bit more educated. Like, I know right now, for example, that my district is going out of their way to put all of their resources into making sure that every kid has a Chromebook. Yes. That is something that I can see us absolutely integrating into like, I could do, if let's just say that there was no COVID, I could do so much if I knew that every student was equipped with a Chromebook. But
why has equity and access to technology not been important before March of 2020, right? Like, that's the thing I'm saying. Like, now it's super important, but why wasn't it important in February?
Well,
right?
You're right. And my thing is I don't even know if my kids are getting the same computer, so the same number per kid per household. So, it's tough because I don't know if we're making like those purchase decisions based on, we were blindsided by this and we just need a way now.
Well, exactly. I can tell you, I'm in these conversations. I've talked to 2 school district heads today. I have a meeting of over 200 tomorrow. I'm doing this all day. I can talk about this all the time. The idea of we're not making a decision because we're trying to see back to normal what happens in the fall. Just first of all, if you just want to argue COVID pandemic, a year before this thing goes away, even with a vaccine, we're still dealing with the flu. This thing's not going away. COVID is a part of life, right? Disease spread. So let's just say, like, back to normal, who knows? But all of that science aside, sorry to bring up science on your show. Speaking of Twitter, right? But here's this. Let's go back to in February, we were doing a thing. In March, we realized we weren't equipped to teach students using modern tools and communication methods that businesses have used for years, that have been around for years to be successful. And that should have been a wake-up call to education. So we should be looking at investing in education for 2021 through the rest of the year to say, why weren't we using these tools already? And let me go on one more rant, because I think education systems, and I just see, like, I have a degree in educational leadership. I am certified to be a school principal. I've worked in state departments. Like, I have this other part of my life. I can say that how can we expect a teacher to create an organized online communication system with, let's even go high school, forget second graders, which is a whole other thing, but 15, 16-year-olds, we're expected to create a system where they can be communicated with, provide regular feedback. One person is managing hundreds of students and trying to organize lessons, whether it's Canvas or Google, in ways that they can access and share and turn in, that's organized and efficient, in a system that still sends 27 friggin' reply all emails every day, that can't even get a friggin' faculty shared calendar on the thing, that still makes announcements to the whole school to call for one person because they can't find them. I mean, think about the systems that we're dealing with. Education systems are antiquated, and businesses have figured out, if Facebook can run thousands, hundreds, think of the businesses that runs hundreds of thousands of employees worldwide. Communication systems en masse that are clearly organized and documented are not new. Why are our education systems not using these? Because, I'm sorry, it's just a rant of mine. I just don't want to hear I don't know what to do in the fall, because if COVID goes away, we can go back to normal. Normal wasn't good enough for our kids in February. That's the soundbite. Normal wasn't good enough in January and February for our kids. And I will say it, so let's do better. We need to do better in education. So forget what COVID's going to do in August. Let's just give every kid access to the technology they need. Let's make sure teachers are equipped to use technology in meaningful ways that represents the way we should be learning today. Let's create systems and practices in education. Let's challenge traditional bias in pedagogy. Let's challenge racism in our curriculum. Let's do better. I don't care about COVID in August. I care about doing better. And that's what we should be doing right now.
You're totally right. Amen is all I can think to say to that. There's so much I could do if I had the resources of in-person instruction, and also knowing that my student was going home every night to a machine where I could teach them. Because that's the thing too, is as someone who's technologically proficient, I feel like I have a lot of control in teaching my kids there as well, just as much as I have control in teaching intonation or tone quality or something like that in the band room. And it's more prevalent with my general music kids, where I have to actually teach them basic computer file management.
Exactly.
Everyone says kids are so smart with technology, and I don't want to
They're not smart. They're just not afraid of it. That's the thing. They're digital natives. They know how to use technology. It's no, they don't. They're just kids are disorganized. They shove all their books and papers in their book bag, and they shove all their files in the middle of nowhere on their computer. On their apps are a mess. They're completely disorganized beings. They're just not afraid of technology. Doesn't mean they're good at it. We as adults are afraid of it, right? Kids are just not afraid. That's the difference that I've found. So this is a good parallel. One of the challenges that I also have learned to overcome in my role at Noteflight is you have to learn to think. You have to learn to have faith and think beyond your understanding of something. So I got myself, the more I learned about how Noteflight works, and I know about code, and I kind of understand there's a server and there's Ruby on Rails and there's JavaScript and I know how these pieces get together. I started bringing and helping design features in a way that I understood, but my understanding of Noteflight code compared to one of our developers is a fraction of a percent. And what I had to realize that I did incorrectly for a while was oh yeah, this is how we're going to build this feature. It's wait a minute, who am I to say how we're going to build it? I was conceiving the possibilities within the framework of just my understanding of it. And I'd have devs come no, there's an easier way to do it, and we could do this. I'm well, I didn't realize that was possible, and I had to check myself. I think the same thing happens in our own understand technology. Your example, I know this thing in Excel, I'm always going to run the same formula the same way and do these steps because that's how I learned it. And I can never, and I think that's what happens as adults. Our own experiences limit our ability to think outside of that. And we need to step back and say, there is an easier way to do this. Don't think about what you can teach based on your understanding of how to create assignment in Canvas. Step back and be willing to learn what's possible for your students that you don't even know yet, because that's what limits the progress, right? That's why education hasn't progressed fast enough, because we tend to teach the way we were taught. And that just kind of perpetuates sameness, is for lack of a better term. I think what happens too is I'm very much a teacher at heart. And what I've had to realize too is that as teachers, we have a mindset of we have to know how to do it because we have to teach it. And you have to let that go because, again, kids being fearless of technology, kids don't look at technology and say, oh, how can I do a thing based on what I know? They say, what can I do with this? Let me Google a question and let Google come up and show me an article about this thing that I didn't know. They're looking for what's not possible. We as teachers are trying to figure out what the basis of our understanding it is, then we're going to control that knowledge and we're going to try to unpack it in a lesson in a methodical way that we want our students to learn based on the way we perceive and think. And we just can't do that anymore. We need to structure lessons where we just give students a goal and a safe place to get to that goal and be okay with them finding multiple ways to get there and teaching us new exciting ways, right? The best thing I heard, and I forget who I stole this from, but teaching today is guiding the social process of learning. That's what we do. We guide the social process of learning. We don't teach only what we can perceive and because if you only teach what you can understand, you actually there's a model, you actually lose knowledge over generations, right? Because then that generation only learns what you could, and then they learn less and less and less. The ultimate goal is if a teacher is successful, the next generation should be smarter, better, and do things that you couldn't do. And there's a whole other, we can get into the whole thing about bias and suppression in education, right? Especially for minority students and poor students. I mean, there's a lot of arguments that the education system in general suppresses, intentionally or not, the success of others. And let's just face it, there's a lot of examples of how that's been happening for years, that we're afraid, right? I mean, how many people are afraid to have your children be smarter than you and do something that you understand? It takes a very confident person to be okay with that, but we have to. And I'm of the age, right? I'm, mid-30s right now. And to the idea of a 20-year-old coming in and doing something better than me, it's like, no, you're 15 years younger. I got 15 years more experience. I'm feeling that times, but I'll tell you, man, in the back of my head, I'm like, good. 22-year-olds should come in and be smarter than me and should think in different ways than me and should be able to have more skills than me. And sure, I have other experiences, but we should be on the same playing field because I'm not going to be around in 50 years. Well, maybe 50 years, I'll make it that long. 100 years, I ain't going to be here. So my goal is to make whoever's here in 100 years, make this world a better, smarter place. And by holding on to knowledge, I can't take it to the grave. So,
Right.
What's the point? So,
Right.
Long rant.
I wanted to just kind of ask you, I don't even know if this is really a question. You know, around the beginning, let's say the first few weeks that we were out, there was a lot of, and is actually in recent days, really just a ton of new generated teacher anxiety about what are the various different plans and models for learning this fall. Am I going to be in school? Am I not going to be in school? It seems like a lot of the fear is more these days surrounding the safety more than anything else. But, when we first let out, there was a lot of fear of, how will I do my job? And some of that fear is resurfacing because I guess if you look realistically at what's happening around the country, it seems clear that most states are going to change something, at least something about whatever was happening these past 4 months. So even that small amount of, let's say you were online learning 100% and you're still online learning 100%. I would take a wild guess that something's going to change. For me in my district, it's looking like we're going to start online, but we're going to totally change our schedule. And it's the first time that I've been anxious about the whole online learning experience. But needless to say, there's lots of anxiety everywhere, and it's really easy to get lost in that. And I remember you actually had a video post you posted to some of the music teacher groups on Facebook where you had some really good advice for teachers on how to stay focused on what really matters and how to sort of survive the nature of these technological challenges, but really have, musical instruction, but also the interest of your students at the core of that. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, I remember, actually, it's on my Facebook feed somewhere because I remember I woke up one morning, I was reading the music teachers, creating an online learning group, and I could feel the tension rising, and I just kind of was like, and I went to type something. I'm like, yeah, I could say this in 2 minutes versus typing a dissertation in here, but we're living through a time that will be studied 500 years from now, someone's going to be looking at the great pandemic of 2019 and beyond. Like, we are living through a major historical time. I mean, you think we still talk about the bubonic plague. We still talk about the dark ages, right? Of like, there must have been some, we don't know what happened. Like, where art and, I mean, this is very serious. And I think, we have a lot of modern luxuries, and I act like life is so hard. As we have internet, we have people that bring your food to you with masks on. Like, we have a lot of luxuries, but let's be real that this is a very scary and dangerous, and I hate to say unprecedented, but having said that, what happens when this is like Maslow level 1? Your needs are survival. We need to survive right now. And so we just need to realize that this is a crazy time, and that we need to just step way back and think about our ultimate purpose. And that's to make the future generation smarter and and human beings and enrich the next generation of lives through education. And we each have a vehicle. Our vehicle is music. We change lives. We create the next generation of human beings. And other teachers do that through math. Other teachers do that through history. Other teachers do that through foreign language. But we do it through music. And we just have to step back and say, that's our goal. And if we're super focused on trying to play grade 2 band rep with 78 kids in a classroom, you're just going to be frustrated, right? Frustration is just and this is coming out in an article I wrote for TMEA coming out next month, but frustration is purely a reaction to expectations. Frustration is about having expectations that aren't met. And if you're frustrated, you need to reset your expectations. COVID, any disease, you're not going to have 80 kids in band. So stop trying to recreate that experience. You're just going to be frustrated. Ultimately, how can we change lives through music right now? It's a pivot. Individualized learning, getting students engaged in creating music, getting students reasons to engage in playing music on their own, kind of like you did, where you mentioned some students played more because you gave them a reason to make music. Maybe it's time that music education talks about just learning about why music is valuable for life. And I want to talk about apps and TikTok. Why TikTok? I would argue that TikTok is successful because it's a musical app. I would say that TikTok is a music app first, and we can even talk about that. But how does music affect our lives in general, and how does it keep us connected? Maybe that's what we teach right now. And I know I'm getting very philosophical here, but at the end of the day, if you're anxious about the future, we're anxious about surviving, right? I mean, there's actual statistics out there of if we go back to school and at the contracting rate of COVID per person, multiply times the death rate, I've seen things like 1,600 of our students and teachers will die if we do this. We're actually effing, and I'm going to we're effing talking about how many people will die if we make a decision. So we really need to check our expectations and realize that prepare for online, prepare for individual experiences, change lives through music. So rant over.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, I think a lot of my traditional performing arts teaching colleagues can relate to the frustrations of the past quarter. I mean, we're starting potentially, I am one of those people who made some of these virtual band videos, and that's a fairly traditional philosophy to try to tackle the problem with. But looking back on that, there are a handful of people who totally were even more flexible than I was in reinventing their process. But even doing what I did, which produced a product which was as similar, it was pretty much it was like Jimmy Fallon recording his talk show, from his house, but it was the middle school band version of that. That's the best I can do, but I really don't think that that's possible or meaningful if we start and possibly end this next school year away from each other. So, I mean, I'm all ears, to you and other people in the community who work with creative music apps. How do we rethink this? Because I think that there are a lot of teachers, even in the performing arts world, who need to be thinking about, okay, well, maybe giving my student a scale exercise is not the right thing to be doing this fall. Right.
And instead of thinking about online or in person, when it comes to music traditionally, what we're really saying is ensembles are individual, right? Let's just think about it, because in person in class, if you can, we're trying to think about. I know that I followed the University of Colorado Boulder and University of Maryland study closely, and I saw the initial results, etc. But now there's conversation about what type of mask and what type of thing over the bells. But for music, we're talking about ensembles versus individualized learning. So don't think so much about online or in person. Structure, look, your 2020, 2021 music curriculum is about individualized, self-guided learning, where you're creating opportunities for students to perform and create and understand music at an individual level in collaboration with others. And I'm not saying collaboration with like sitting next to and blowing an instrument, but how can we create? So I would structure a curriculum in writing that as a year of experiences that are sequential, that allow students to experience and learn about music individually in collaboration with others through multiple, different assignments and project-based learning, etc. Then if you're going all online, those can happen online. If you get your students in person, those activities and enrichments can happen in person. When one kid comes in with the coronas and the school gets shut down for 14 days, which will happen, then you can go back online. So I think we focus too much about the physical place where we're going to be, and we're not focused enough about the type of learning that works, that is most susceptible to a blended learning environment.
See, I would argue that it's always been about that individual, and that, like in the band world,
right?
Should be the band experience. At least at my school, the way that we've tried to structure it is so much focused on the individual development, and the band. Even though, the thing that you have to reconcile with is that band is the thing that they are in 45 minutes a day every day, whereas the small group sectional. So, some school districts don't even have that luxury, but at my school, we see our students once every 6 class days in a small group of just their instrument type. And that's where we focus a little bit more on the individual skill. But the whole curriculum is geared towards that. The band experience in my classroom never exceeds the ability of my students to show mastery on their individual instrument skills. So it's and then the feeling of performing is not like some go out and win trophies kind of thing where you show your highest degree of technical display. It's just icing on the cake. We get to be together. We have that social element that, honestly, as much as we try to develop the students' individuality, the students still do love being together. A lot of them are in band for that part of the experience, but it's still at the end of the day not the prize, I don't think.
Well, now you're preaching to the choir, of course, but how many music educators structure programs that way? And no knock against music educator, but that's the if you're struggling to, maybe that's the thing too. Like if you're a music educator that's struggling, like I can't function unless I have my kids in a room and I have a stick in my hand. Maybe the question is, how can you do a better job of creating individual learning experiences? Because I've been preaching for years in my sessions. 2, 3, 4 years ago, I started adding a slide about, experiences after music. So my quick rant was that, I would meet a lot of people that are like, oh, I did music in high school. Or it came from my advocacy work. I'd go to DC and one of the questions we asked with staffers and congressional representatives is, did you ever do music? And most people in DC said yes. Most of the staffers, interns, they're like, yes, I did music. I played this. And I left one day at DC, it's probably 2016, and said, God, why is that such a past tense question? Why is it a past tense? And I went on this soul searching thing and I realized that, well, in a traditional music education standpoint, if a kid leaves band in senior year, whatever, or they quit in 10th grade for the AP class, whichever reason you stop doing band, they perceive that they can never do music again. Why is that? So you make it through 10th grade. You've been in music for 5 years. You've studied to play the trumpet. Why do you feel like you have to sell the trumpet at a yard sale now because you can't play it anymore? And a lot of it's because that kid was taught for 5 years that the only time you can play music is if a teacher hands you a part and waves a stick in a group of 60 people. And now that it's just you and your trumpet, you don't know how to find your favorite song and take it up a step and even play it with a piano player. You can't go to your church and play along with the church choir because you don't know how to play individual music on your instrument. So again, what we were doing in January wasn't working. So let's do better. Like every kid that does music should be able to take their instrument or their voice and perform music on their own for the love and beauty of performing. And if we weren't already doing that, why, again, we shouldn't be thinking about, are we going online in the fall? We should be thinking about, why the heck have we not been doing this for 100 years?
Preach.
So again, I'll say it over and over again. I'm glad you got me riled up, buddy. This is fun. These things are but seriously, it's not about online or in person.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway.
Well, App of the week and album of the week are up next. So I'll go first. App of the week. I try to keep these like really fresh and interesting and like recent, even sometimes to me, but I'm not going to do that this week. I'm going to choose an app that's always... Have you ever gone into the App Store on your phone and looked like what's the first couple of apps that you downloaded back when the iPhone first came out?
Oh gosh, I have not.
It's crazy. It's crazy to see like all the dead software, but it's also crazy to see that one or two apps actually are still like in active development. Like Facebook is an obvious early example. One of the first apps I installed on the iPhone, which still has a place on the first page of my home screen, is the Kindle app. And I have mixed feelings about Kindle because I have this like grand vision for ebooks where like they're not just like these casual like digital reading experiences, but instead they're like these ultimate reference resource guides, like where you can highlight stuff, but you can like cross-reference your highlights between different apps and save them to your computer's hard drive, and you can like share them with one another, and you can do research, and you can like search your computer's hard drive, but amongst your files that show up in the search results, also your favorite quotes from your favorite books and your notes on them show up. I have this like crazy vision, but Kindle is never going to make a Mac app that adheres to all those conventions of Mac OS. They do, however, have a continued investment in making like a lot of the consumer facing features really good. And there's this new... Okay, so like we're home all the time now, right? I listen to mostly podcasts in my listening time, but I just feel like I don't look like I'm limiting my own potential to learn from audio content when I do that. And I've been trying, I keep putting the Kindle and the Audible app on the home screen of my phone, like as a, it's like wishful thinking, it's like, but Kindle has this thing where like, if you buy a book on Kindle, they'll give you the audio book version, the Audible version for really cheap, like a couple bucks. And then the placement syncs. So what I've been doing is I've been using, and then the Kindle app has Audible playback built into it if you own the recording.
Interesting.
So like I've been reading The Rest is Noise by Alex Ross, and I own the audiobook version. So what I can do is I'm in the Kindle app and I'll be reading, and then like, it'll be around dinner time and I'll go like wash some dishes. Well, there's a play button at the bottom of the page, and then it'll just like right within the Kindle app, it'll start playing right from that same spot in the Audible recording. Or I can
so you can go back and forth.
You can bounce between the two and the syncing position remains. Or I can like tell my Alexa device to just read me, the rest is, did you see that behind me in the video?
I saw it turn on. Yeah. Alexa's like, what? You said my name?
You said my name? Would you like me to read you more of The Rest is Noise by Alex Ross? I would love to. So, you can bounce between them, and it's just like made this kind of like digital, because like I said, like I want e-reading to be this like seamless thing that's empowering, but it's not. But in this one small way, I feel like I'm actually kind of cheating reality by just, it doesn't matter, like, is it my hands and my eyes that are free or my ears that are free? I can like consume this content that enriches and edifies me. So it's cool. I've been doing a lot of that, a lot of Audible listening, a lot of Kindle reading.
I would love to find a way to study over time. When you're alternating between reading versus listening of a book, what you remember most of the book in a year, like which parts of the book were most memorable to you? Because you get time out anything you read, like, oh, that cool line. Does the way you consume it affect the most memorable sections, or was the content? I'm sure we would find that visual or audio, you may pick up on things differently. So, be interesting to know.
Totally.
Anyway,
or do different things stick? Yeah, I think different things stick. Or you have a different fondness. What I mean? Like you're sort of inventing. So I mean, especially when you're reading fiction, you're sort of inventing a little bit of the character in your brain by filling in the gaps of the details that are missing from the book when you read. Whereas when you have someone narrating voices, it's just that's so much less abstract.
Exactly. I find and again, I'll kind of fill you in a second how little time I have, but I always thought if I was listening to an audiobook, I would zone out faster. But I found myself, sometimes I'll read something and I'll flip 10 pages of reading and I'll realize that I've been daydreaming the whole time. Can't remember a single thing I read. I was like, crap, so I have to go back and read it again.
Yep.
And, sometimes listening to something, it's a little easier to actually stay focused, which was counterintuitive for me. But I would suspect that you're going to remember the things you heard over the things you read in a year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
I've been wrong before.
So what about you?
Well, Yeah, so I remember you texted me last night. You're like, hey, we're doing an app thing. I'm like, oh gosh. So full disclosure, my life right now is wake up, try to exercise, argue with myself. Either I win the argument exercise or I lose in the shower right away. But go to work and honestly work until 8 or 9 at night. We have a joke that dinner's at 9. We're like, we're really going to eat dinner at 7:30 tonight. 9 o'clock we're eating dinner, and then I fall asleep at 9:30 and it starts over again. Now I'm not trying to like sit here and be like a martyr. Like I love what I'm doing because now every hour I work I get to build awesome stuff for educators, so I can write, articles and I can do all sorts of stuff and I'm teaching in class. So the idea of me having the luxury of spending any time with an app or anything right now is just, unfortunately, I just need to do a better job at making that time for myself. But the app that I've been very interested in, I want to kind of talk about, I mentioned already, is actually TikTok. Because I do find myself, when I take the dog out at night, I'll scroll mindlessly for about 5 minutes. And I have a history with TikTok. And I think you'd be interested in this because I know you're actually one of my... I'm very much... it's because I do a lot of digital marketing. It's another kind of area. If you wanted to like... I can actually set up, like, I can show you a specific ad and find me a 27-year-old in Brooklyn who likes Nike shoes. I could serve that person an ad and then remarket to them until they purchase and measure all the results. Like, I can do all that stuff and I enjoy doing it. So having said that, I knew TikTok was, there's a lot of buzz around it. I'm also very much, I want to see the world through younger people's eyes, like new social app. So I downloaded it a little while ago when it was like the big rage. I had it for a day and I deleted it. And because it just basically, it's like, oh, fill out information about you. I signed in with Facebook. So obviously it has a lot of data on me already and the age and demographic of who I am. And I started scrolling and I saw nothing but young girls doing, quote unquote, sexy dances. And I felt like a creeper and I literally closed the app and deleted it off my phone. And I said, this is no, gross. I can't ugh. And then I read some more about it and I was like, okay, you know what? The algorithm is really good at like trying to predict what you like. And I guess when I first did the app and I came on, it's like, oh, you're a male and then you're 30s and blah, blah, blah. That means like, oh God. So I started deliberately like scrolling through that stuff as quick as possible. But then there's like the parent pranks. So I started seeing things about parent pranks and I'm like, oh, and it was like, hey, mom or dad. And like this one where this like kids had like put a picture on their TV screen of like a cracked screen and like the dad came down. It was like hilarious to me. And I watched that over and over. So then I start getting like a million parent pranks thing, which I thought was hilarious. Then I start seeing some musicians on there and I start watching these videos about people making music. And so I was like, wow, this thing learns my preferences so fast. And I deliberately, I'm not liking, I'm not favoriting, I'm not doing anything because I want to see. So the technology of how this video, this app learns what you're interested in and caters content to you is actually incredible. And for someone that's like super deep into like Facebook ads and Google ads and Instagram and knows how those platforms create audiences, I think TikTok's doing a better job than everyone. So that's a fascination for me. But on the same time, I said earlier, like, why is it so popular? Is it videos? Is it music? But I also realized that I started going down a rabbit hole of like a sound bite. And there's something like, they use sound bites from the movie The Incredibles or sound bites from a song. You can click and see everyone's video. And like they get these challenges and people start doing either a dance or a joke or some parody to a sound bite. And then everyone wants to recreate it. But it starts with the music. Like it is about creating video and visual content around a short piece of music. And I was like, wow, this is not a video app. This is a music app. And people see each other's music and this is an app that's engaging young people to actually create content and perform for each other around musical clips. And it actually is just intriguing to me. So anyway, I'm looking at it from more of a analysis, society. Why do young people think this is better than Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat? And I'm starting to get it. It's an opportunity to perform, an opportunity to engage, and it's very interesting to me. So that's my app. I mean, TikTok it fascinates me for those reasons.
I will limit myself as best as I possibly can. You can't, with a few minutes left to record, mentioned TikTok to me, and then
Well, I see you on there too, so I figure you had some ideas.
no, I have also turned around. It was definitely spending the first week with it and like letting it learn me. That definitely turned it around because it evolves over the first couple of weeks you use it into something that actually is very intoxicating. And I do agree that, I'm sure that we both get served a lot of musical content, like not just the fact that there is music featured in a lot of the videos as background, but like I see a lot of musicians who will play little loops of things, and then one of the features of the app is you can create something called a duet where you record yourself along to them, and then that is a new TikTok post. And it's limited in a lot of really good ways that make it feel really good. Like there's just a basic liking and commenting system on TikToks. They're very shareable, even with people who don't use TikTok. Like it's just very intoxicating. There are also like tons of interesting privacy topics technologically concerning TikTok.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, dude, like touch her up. I can tell you 100% with everything I know about digital marketing and software, that app was built deliberately to collect data. I will bet everything, because a song has there's data, like just in general, like on just marketing data on songs. We know that a particular song has a demographic, a type of people that listen to it, so not only those songs carry demographic, then so they can determine from what you like from based on the music and then they're combining all that data. And of course, most of us just log in with Facebook or Google, right? So of course they're taking all of that user information and pulling it in. They are building profiles on people, and there's probably some like deep Chinese secret thing here too. I mean, I hate to like assume another country, but I don't want to go on that path. But there's also, notice like every social app, they came out, got very popular, and now they're just starting to do ads, right? They knew what they were doing. They wanted to build super slick profiles, and now they're actually advertising TikTok ads on Facebook, because I get TikTok ad advertising all the time. Because again, and as a marketer, I'm already looking in TikTok ads, right? If I start advertising on TikTok and my cost per click is much lower on TikTok than Facebook and Instagram, and I'm getting more results, guess who I'm going to spend my ad dollars, right? So their algorithm, the more accurate that is, the more valuable they are as an advertising platform. That's what they're built on. And sometimes Facebook like annoys me, because I'll go and like go for shopping something. Like I'll go online shopping and start buying like something. Say I buy a new suit or buy a tie. And then I start getting tie ads for Facebook for like 2 days. I'm like, well, I just bought that, dude. Like, don't advertise to me. I already bought the thing, Facebook's very literal, and you can play with this. Just log into Facebook, go to a couple of websites. You'll start seeing ads for that type of content. My frustration with Facebook is it's always about it's kind of like the last thing you viewed. So your interest audiences are really based on the last thing that person viewed. I think TikTok is much, much smarter, and it scares me and fascinates me at the same time. I could obviously go on and on, but
I could too. Yeah, but that's fair. That's fair. I'm going to move on, but we could have done 30 minutes on TikTok. So album of the week. Yeah, I've been listening to speaking of Alex Ross, author of The Rest Is Noise, he did a profile in the New Yorker on Igor Levit, who's a concert pianist, and it was good. It was really gripping, and I stumbled across on Twitter. He's like a really active Twitter personality, and he had retweeted himself performing this, I think, the second Beethoven piano concerto, and it was interesting. It was like a COVID performance. Like the orchestra was like really far spread apart, and there were like 10 people in the audience, which I'm like really curious about the conditions at which that was performed. Like he came out in a mask and sat it down on the piano, but like, okay, so like we've as people who have our background in like in music, like we've heard a lot of Beethoven in our lives, but I just like was like really surprised by how fresh it was. Like it just really grabbed me. Like he plays with a delicacy and control that's combined with like a power and a demand that like you hear and appreciate every note, even above the sound of the orchestra. Like without pounding, he's like clearly the distinguished voice in this recording, which I'll link in the show notes. But yet he's also like really delicate and precise and technical and making a really interesting and assertive musical phrase. So I was just like, oh, I got to check him out. So I've been listening to his recordings of the piano sonatas all week, and that is my album of the week.
Well, you're so God. I love talking to you because you're so thoughtful and methodical about your consumption. Musically, technologically, and I always really enjoyed that. I forget the first time we met. I can't even remember, but I swear it was like, wow, this guy. Like, so I love hearing the way you describe that. I mean, again, this is my fault. I'm not going to sit here and say anyone's like forced me to work like a maniac, but the idea of sitting and listening to music, like that's 2 hours that I could be building solutions for educators and they can get them earlier. Like I have this like horrible guilt of like, if I'm not working because I have so much potential to make so much change now. So I'm just not listening. But the thing about Truly, like, I'm going to go with this, the Hamilton craze based on the, Disney Plus coming out. I was down with Hamilton in 2016 when I first heard it. I'll never forget the first time I listened to it. I'll never forget and I listened to albums on planes all the time. That's when I used to listen to music. Like I'd get on airplanes. I stopped working on airplanes because I felt like I needed a break. So I'd listen to music, but that's why I'm not listening anymore. But Hamilton, but it's interesting now that Disney Plus come out, I saw all these people in articles like it's the first time it's ever been out. Like, we experienced this in 2016. We felt the magic, the absolute like brilliance of it. And now people are coming again because they just saw it on Disney Plus. People that don't ever see music theater, and they're like, wow, theater. It's like, yeah, you can tell a story in theater different than in cinema and different than other mediums. And so I went down a path recently of really listening to that again and again, and both listening and then watching and experience what you hear when you watch it. And, I've been really appreciative of the diversity. I was just listening to the multiple styles, even some of the songs that I didn't like. Like I always thought, what did I miss? Probably because I played way too many jazz gigs that like that kind of cheesy jazz comes up and I'm like, oh God, like it's just kind of the stuff I never enjoyed playing. So, but also like, wow, there's the stylistic elements and all of that, just resurfacing those pieces as other people experience them for the first time. And then one thing I've learned just being in publishing, because obviously I work for Hal Leonard, is that typically musical theater is the most, stingy is not the right word, the most controlling of the licensing of the ability to arrange their music, because there's a consistency of music theater that is the magic, right? Like when you go see Hamilton in New York, you've heard Hamilton, you should go see it in Chicago or Toronto or Boston, and it should be the same Hamilton, right? So musical theater, and like from musician, like licensing, rentals, the rental scores, they have to be erased. Like it's very rare that you just get to like freely rearrange musical theater stuff because there's a perfection and a consistency that's expected in the show. But what does Lynn do, right? Lynn, like we're best friends, like Lin-Manuel, like we're text buddies, whatever. But we get this beautiful album. We get this like completely breaks all the rules of traditional Broadway, but still has the same traditional curves of a Broadway. Sure, you can look at Old Riders and Hammerside stuff. The arcs and the hit points of the musical, I mean, Les Mis, all the great ones, Hamilton follows that. But the musical styles and the songs are just drastically different than anything we've heard before. But it's still based on the tradition. I mean, I could do 2 hours on the similarities between Les Mis and Hamilton when it comes to character development and story arc, but that's a whole other thing.
I was going to say, like, you should come on again soon just so we can do TikTok and Hamilton, because
I mean, I could literally,
topic for me.
Well, let's do it. But the last point is that what's interesting to me from a rights publishing standpoint is Hamilton comes out in the music, and what has he done? He does a remix album. He writes some of the most diverse music Broadway with the most diverse singers and diverse characters, and then he goes to other diverse people and say, hey, Busta Rhymes, I want you to redo this song. This song has become so popular, but I want you to take my music and I want you to change it and make it speak to you. And he did it again and again and again. So like you listen to those remix albums, and then every week, and he's like, I'm going to remix with Ben Platt, and I'm going to remix again. And like, it's just this idea that like, can it ever be too diverse for Lin-Manuel? It just keeps getting more diverse and more diverse. And he's not about My Shot. How many versions of My Shot are out there? And he's like, please do it again. So it's beautiful in that way. And we re-release it 4 years later and we go crazy about it again. I love that aspect.
Yeah, totally. There's been with the Disney Plus release, there's been, of course, a ton of Hamilton criticism from all different kinds of accounts and areas of study in the world, from musicology to music theory to cultural critique. And, you can say a lot of things about Hamilton 5 years ago or today. But one thing that I don't feel like you can really argue about or dispute is just his sheer ambition that he had, and has, as a songwriter.
Oh, I've seen the haters, I've seen the critiques, and I've seen Lin-Manuel respond on Twitter to some. But here's the thing. You don't have to do this now, but I'll ask anyone. Name 5 Hamilton songs. Sing the lyrics, sing 3 lyrics from Hamilton. Everyone can do it. Name 5 critics. I think there'd be flash in the pan. The point is that what the memory is the impact of this thing, right? The long withstanding point is this thing changed the game and you're talking about it. So you want to write a long article and get some hate on it and have a bunch of people, get you popular on social or get some, be a flash in the pan on your blog. That's fine. But here's the thing, Hamilton changed the world and has a massive impact. And so that's, haters going to hate, and I get that, but you can't argue the impact, right?
Totally.
Because I can name 5 characters in the original Broadway cast before I can name 2 people that have written a critique on it.
Well, John, it's been good. You've reminded me that it shouldn't be. I looked it up on my podcast history. It's been 2 years since you were last on, and we should probably do it again sooner rather than later.
Let's do it. Let's just do a Facebook live chat every once in a while and just let people get people all riled up in the comments.
Get them all excited. Yeah. Ooh, Hamilton, TikTok. All right. Well, speaking of TikTok, I think I'm going to go on it now.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rob. It's always good to chat with you. You've one thing that you do so well is you pull things out of me that I wouldn't have said if I was just talking. So I love chatting with you. You're really good about getting me fired up. So it's been really fun. And I hope people have listened for the past hour and 48 minutes and 41 seconds.
You couldn't have said a nicer and more meaningful thing to me, because that is the nature of what I'm supposed to do when I'm in front of a microphone talking to someone else in this context. So thank you. And thank you for being on and so engaging a guest.
I try.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Music Ed Tech Talk. I'm your host, Robbie Burns. If you want to hear more or read more, you can check out the blog at musicedtechtalk.com. I've been doing some cleaning up there, and the blog and the podcast are now hosted under that same URL. So if you subscribe to the blog, you get not only my posts, but you get posts that contain the episode show notes and a little embedded music player to listen straight to the episode. But you can still subscribe to the podcast directly in a podcast player of your choice. Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Castro, Spotify, your choice. If you like the show, it'd be a big help to me if you give it a 5-star rating in the Apple Podcast directory and leave a review to let someone else know you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to read more, you can buy my book, Digital Organization Tips for Music Teachers, from Oxford University Press or Amazon.com. You can find me on Twitter at Robbie Burns, and I'm also Robbie Burns or some variation of that on most of the other social media places. I've been posting a bit on my YouTube page recently. I'm Robbie Burns there as well. I've recently posted a video tutorial on how to make a virtual ensemble, which isn't something that's very relevant this summer, but it's something that you might find yourself wanting to do come this fall. Got a lot of great content I'm cooking up on the blog and the podcast and on the YouTube page, so check it all out. Please leave a review and give me a rating, and see you next time.